Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Supervisor Q&A on VISTA Member Recruitment. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule to talk about VISTA Member Recruitment, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. Today you're going to hear from several AmeriCorps VISTA staff based at the headquarters of the Corporation for National and Community Service. We are all here to provide you important information and resources, as well as answer your questions. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA training specialist, specifically focusing on orienting, training, and supporting our VISTA supervisors and sponsors through the VISTA sponsor orientation, webinars, resources, and more. Next, I'll turn it over to my coworker in the VISTA training unit, Chris Hawks.
Hi, thanks, Eric. Hi, I am Chris Hawks, and I am also a VISTA training specialist, similar to Eric. Although my focus is on orienting, training, and supporting VISTA candidates and members through the pre-service process with VISTA member orientation, and also in service with our in-service trainings, our member webinars, and other such training subjects for our VISTA members. I will pass it on back to Eric.
Thank you, Chris. I'm so glad you were able to join us and help support VISTA supervisors get their questions answered. Next, I'll turn it over to my other wonderful coworker, Beth Binkley.
Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. And as you can see, I'm the Marketing Outreach and Recruitment Manager for VISTA, and I've been in this position for about a year and a half. And I oversee all things marketing, outreach, and recruitment, including our campus recruiters program, our national ad campaign, and just ensuring that all of you have the resources and tools that you need so that we can support you in your recruitment efforts. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Beth. I'm also glad that you were able to join us, in addition to another fabulous colleague that I want you all to meet. I know I say fabulous a lot, but you really have to trust me that all of these coworkers are amazing. I'll turn it now to introduce Crystalline Dupree.
Hello, I am Crystalline Dupree. I am Outreach and Recruitment Specialist for AmeriCorps VISTA. As Outreach and Recruitment Specialist, my goal is to coordinate resources that will allow us to effectively promote the value of serving as an AmeriCorps VISTA. And I just got to throw this in. It really helps me in doing that I served as an AmeriCorps VISTA. So I kind of got an inside track as far as what attracts VISTAs and helps us serve. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here today.
Thank you, Crystalline, and thank you to all of you, as I know you'll be very, very useful and meaningful to the supervisors on this webinar. And finally, also joining us today are Mike Dietz and Steve Gray from our partners at LSI, who will be helping us to manage the Zoom technology, as well as Julie Gentile. You'll also see them in the chat panel posting some links and questions, as well as assisting with various aspects of today's webinar. So really quickly, here are the goals for our session today. We want you to be able to understand a couple of basic elements about recruitment, which we know most of you probably know, but it'll be a quick reminder. Also learn some tips, suggestions, and recommendations from our VISTA staff that you just met, as well as peers on this webinar. We're hoping to get many of your questions answered, and at the end, we want to show you where some critical and useful recruitment resources are located. Looking at today's agenda, we'll discuss a brief overview of recruitment, and then we'll have 4 sections for questions. The first is on service opportunity listings. Then we'll have questions on marketing and outreach. Then we'll have questions on interviewing and selecting applicants. And then we have a section for any other recruitment questions that may come up. We'll finally end with providing you some really useful resources for recruitment, ask you to complete a quick evaluation. We'll provide you some next steps, and then we'll end with showing you information about the next monthly supervisor webinar. Since many of you have questions and probably already have a working knowledge of VISTA member recruitment, we'll just very briefly highlight some of the things that you already know or maybe want to know. We start with assuming that most of you know what recruitment is in general, and of course, why recruitment is important to your VISTA project. Obviously, recruitment involves marketing your position, outreach to potential applicants, and of course, advertising your opportunities. Finding enough applicants who are interested in serving with your project to fill the VISTA positions that you have. Developing your own process and steps for who would be a good fit as a VISTA member with your specific VISTA project. Getting to know the applicants throughout the recruitment and interview phases, just as your applicants are getting to know you and your VISTA project. Carefully explaining the need for your organization to have VISTA members because potential applicants really want a better understanding of what they would be doing, why it's important, and what difference will it make to them and to your community. And taking the time to highlight why someone should join your VISTA project and thinking about what makes your VISTA project unique, possibly fun, and really meaningful for the person who's volunteering to serve. You really want to think about how do you go where the people are, because people may not always come to where you are. Think differently, act differently. As Crystal and Dupree had talked with me a while ago, one of the things we wanted to talk about is sourcing non-traditional candidates can really give you a competitive edge. And by non-traditional talent, we mean candidates who often get overlooked. For example, some of those without a formal four-year college degree or elite credentials. Remember, CNCS does not require a college degree, only a high school diploma or equivalency when it comes to education and national service commitment. So, consider not just looking for someone's education level, but also for the skills and experience that they bring. You may also want to look at seniors and retirees who may be overlooked because they likely have years and years of experience and may be interested in serving their community. Making your talent pipeline more inclusive can really help you find the AmeriCorps VISTA member that you need, all while improving diversity and increasing retention. Also, we know recruitment is not always easy. Some projects is easier than others it's much more difficult. But if you don't try to enjoy it and show your enthusiasm for the project, how do you think the applicants are going to feel? They may drop out of the process. So you need to enjoy promoting your VISTA positions and stimulating discussion about what VISTA is and what VISTA members will be doing at your project. You should be excited about talking about what makes your VISTA project great and what makes it stand out. We want you to appreciate the information that you learn about applicants and show them your enthusiasm. You also want to thank applicants for interviewing. Even though it's a simple step and might be overlooked, it really goes a long way, and then you can provide them next steps on the recruitment process. You also want to regularly communicate with selected applicants and get them energized about starting service. Make it fun by adding in elements to your interviews, communication, and more that you would find fun if you were the applicant. Think about what it would be like if you were in their shoes. Be engaging, be lively, and be happy to show each applicant your love for your work and why they may fall in love with VISTA service at your site. And I can't stress it enough, enjoy the journey, even though it's difficult and timely, because the more that you enjoy it, the more it may become natural to you and really trickle down to help the applicant enjoy their journey through the application and recruitment process and into becoming a VISTA member. So with that, let's briefly talk about logistics before we get into the questions. I'm going to give you some logistical details about how this will work, and then we'll move forward. So as you saw on the agenda, we have 4 sections to answer questions on those specific aspects of VISTA member recruitment. And since we know that you may have questions not related to these sections, the 4th section is specifically devoted to any type of recruitment question. Each section will begin with a summary of tips and recommendations. Each section will have a maximum of 10 to 11 minutes for us to ask the question and then answer it. So if we get a lot of questions, which is good, we may not be able to answer all of them. And if somehow we unexpectedly don't use the entire time for a section, we'll have additional time for other sections. And each section will conclude with us asking you to type in the chat if there's any additional information or resources that you need on that specific aspect of recruitment. And a couple of other reminders: to ask a question, you may either type it into the chat panel, and we ask you to please be specific with your question, or you can click the raise hand button in Zoom to ask a question over the phone. Again, we do ask you to make your question clear and easy to understand because we might move on in the presentation, and we want to make sure that we understand all the details of your question so we can answer it efficiently and accurately. I will be typing or copying the question that's being answered onto the screen so that all of us can follow along with the question being answered. We'll have VISTA staff that you just met a few minutes ago responding to the question and providing answers until it's time to move on to the next section. Again, just a reminder, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can in the short time we have together. And after all sections are complete, we'll show you numerous recruitment resources available to you. So with that, our first section of questions is specifically on service opportunity listings.
Thanks, Eric. And yeah, as Eric mentioned, this first section, we're going to focus on service opportunity listings. So if you have questions specifically on this topic, please feel free or go ahead and type those into the chat. And as Eric mentioned, we'll try to get to quite a few of them, as many as we can. And while you're thinking of the questions, or maybe to help spark some ideas, we'll give just a brief, quick overview of service opportunity listings. So these are that two-line teaser, or sometimes more if needed, to give a potential applicant an idea of your VISTA positions and VISTA project. It should be catchy, truthful, and easily understandable. You want to attract people to apply to your positions. Sounds reasonable. Spell out acronyms. That's something we sometimes struggle with ourselves. I think any federal agency does. So we have so many acronyms. But yeah, be sure to spell those out and of course use correct grammar, because you don't want to lose people before you even have a chance to know you lost them. And be honest and talk truthfully about what skills they will build from this opportunity, because some people, quite a few VISTAs, are really motivated by the professional development aspect of VISTA and really learning. Also, any additional benefits you may offer, and some projects may offer like a housing stipend. Not every project, but if you do, definitely that's a huge selling point. Also, where your sites are located, your site is, or if you have multiple sites, where it's located geographically so they have a good idea right off the bat. And the actual description of what the VISTA member will do. Okay, as you have been thinking of these and see some chat questions coming in, we will start to answer any questions we see.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. And there are a couple of questions coming in, so I will go ahead and copy and paste some on the screen, and we will go ahead and start to answer them. So the first question on opportunity listings is, what happens to an opportunity listing after I submitted an e-grant and after it's been approved, or before it's approved, while it's still in the pending phase? So I'll go ahead and start the answer to that, and certainly if any of my colleagues have a response, feel free to chime in. So obviously, you know that the service opportunity listing is something that you post in e-grant. Once you create a new opportunity and you hit submit and it says pending, really behind the scenes what's going on is there are several staff, including your CNCF state or regional office, and potentially VISTA headquarters staff as well, that are reviewing the opportunity listing to make sure that it's appropriate, that it doesn't contain direct service. It's really a cursory overview to make sure that the listing makes sense, it doesn't violate any rules or protocols, which obviously hopefully it doesn't, before they approve it. So it's not necessarily a lengthy process. It shouldn't take too long, but obviously if you have questions about a specific listing and the length of time it's taking, you can certainly reach out to your CNCF state or regional office for questions. Before I go to the next question, I'll see if any of my colleagues have anything that they want to add to that question. Hearing none, I will go ahead and move on to the next question, and keep these questions coming. Again, we are keeping track of time so that we can make sure to have time for other sections as well. So the next question that came in is a very, very good question as well. And that was, do you have any tips on how to overcome the limitations of e-grants and formatting opportunity listings, such as bulleting or paragraph breaks? That is an excellent question, and I will answer it by saying, we all know that eGrants is your favorite website to visit. It's extremely flexible and lovely. We also know that it does have its own challenges based on it being developed in Oracle and all sorts of other things. So you are correct that you're not able to add any formatting, bullets or colors or highlights because it's basically plain text. However, what some sponsors do, and you do want to be careful with this, some sponsors will, if you can't do a bullet, they'll put an asterisk or a dash to kind of outline it. Sometimes that works, but what we strongly recommend in all of the stuff we talk about, marketing, outreach, recruitment, is that before you actually submit it, you take a look to see what it actually looks like. Sometimes on your screen, it might look beautiful, but once it gets submitted, or once you're about to submit, you realize the formatting looks off. So I'll turn it over to Beth to answer a related question around this. And sometimes what the question relates to opportunity listings is, can sponsors put links to their website in the opportunity listings so that they can do formatting or other features on their website and just link directly to their website?
Hi, I do believe that you can provide a link to your site, and I know that there is space to provide the contact information and email address. So I do believe that there is a place that you can add a link.
Definitely. So yes, just please be aware that there are limitations with eGrants, but again, we want to make sure that because it's a system you have to use for the opportunity listings, you do have the ability to type information in there. And as Chris mentioned a few minutes ago, you don't want to put a dissertation in there, but enough information that captures a candidate's attention. Again, I do want to mention, I see a couple of questions coming in not related to opportunity listings, which we will get to in a minute. But I do first want to see what other questions related to service opportunity listings are available. And I see another question coming in, so let me go ahead and post that on the screen. And as I do that, one other reminder is if you do want to ask a question by phone, I know most people are joined by computer, but if you do want to ask a question by phone, please use the raise hand feature and our team will unmute your line. So the question I'm putting on the screen now is, what is the difference between the choices under the program benefits for living allowance and stipend? So I will actually open this up to any of our three coworkers who would like to answer this. I do have a response, but I'll first turn it over to Chris, Crystalline, or Beth to outline the difference between the living allowance and the stipend, which we know a lot of sponsors accidentally get confused. Chris, maybe do you want to take this question? I know this question does come up in the VISTA member orientation sometimes.
Hey, yeah, I was going to reach out. So yeah, so there is a difference, and sometimes the kind of nomenclature or the words kind of are interchangeable or are used interchangeably, but not necessarily correctly. So the living allowance is that, biweekly living allowance that VISTAs receive every 2 weeks throughout the year of their service. The stipend is the cash stipend award, the end of service award, where they can either choose the cash stipend or the education award. So sometimes we do get this question and hear people using the term stipend, but they're really referencing their living allowance. But we really try to make sure we distinguish between those two, at least through the VISTA member orientation. Make sure members are well aware that those are two totally separate things. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Eric.
No, that is absolutely correct, and thank you. It's an important clarification. We try to make that distinction to VISTA members and VISTA candidates as well, just because they are very different things, and we also want to make sure that all of our information is correct online as well. So there's another question here that's kind of related to opportunity listings. I will post it on the screen, and then I'll answer it in terms of opportunity listings and then other features as well. So a question that came in was, what are some strategies for finding Peace Corps and AmeriCorps alumni who are eligible for serving as VISTA leaders? And I love the thanks and the exclamation mark. You're welcome. So I'll first answer it relating to opportunity listings, and then I'll turn to my colleagues to see if they have anything else to add. So obviously, in your opportunity listing, you want to be honest about if you are specifically searching for a VISTA leader position. Your opportunity listing should specifically talk about the role of a VISTA leader and what that VISTA leader would be doing at your site. We have had a lot of AmeriCorps alum and Peace Corps alum, returned Peace Corps volunteers who have been interested in VISTA, and a lot more have been signing up recently. So a lot of them are going to my.americorps.gov and looking at the opportunity listings to find opportunities, especially to serve as VISTA leader. So part of it, you really want to just make sure your opportunity listing is accurate, enticing, exciting, but also outlines what the position will do. The other thing I'll quickly mention is, in terms of AmeriCorps alumni especially, we have a lot of information on the VISTA campus that we'll talk about towards the end in terms of resources, but we do have a lot of VISTA members who are nearing the end of their service who will post discussion forums on the VISTA campus about ways that they're doing recruiting and other things that they can do to get people involved. So even though the VISTA campus is more for an internal audience for people who have already started serving or are about to start serving, it's a way that they can kind of spread the resources around to other projects that can use that information in their recruiting. Let me pause here to see if there's other comments from the marketing team about Peace Corps and alumni and trying to find eligible people who are eligible to serve as VISTA leaders.
Hey, Eric, this is Beth. I'd love to share a couple of resources around returned Peace Corps volunteers. So there are a couple of resources that we sent out, I believe, in May in the sponsor and supervisor Gov delivery on recruitment resources. And just a reminder that you can post your AmeriCorps service opportunities on the career link, the Return Peace Corps Volunteer career link page. And then they also have a Peace Corps COVID-19 evacuation support Facebook group of about 9,000 members. And you can post the opportunity listings there as well. And I will be happy to post some links to both of those in the comments in the chat. And so those are two opportunities. And I was going to mention this a little later in the webinar, but I'll go ahead and say it now that we, in April, a group from CNCS did a presentation to the evacuated Peace Corps volunteers to let them know about the opportunities, and we specifically highlighted VISTA leaders and the summer associate opportunities to those returned Peace Corps volunteers.
Thank you, Beth. And thank you if you're able to. I see Crystalline, thank you for posting links in the chat. Just a reminder, as Beth and Crystalline mentioned, we will be posting links in the chat as we answer questions to help you through this process. So we probably have time for one more question on this topic, and I'm going to direct this one to Chris. And let me see if I can post it. This one is kind of a follow-up to the question that Beth just answered, but it specifically relates to, is there a difference in the terminology between AmeriCorps VISTA member and AmeriCorps VISTA leader in terms of duties and responsibilities and living allowance? And Chris, I know that this does tie into the service opportunity listing, but I know in your work with VISTA members and the VISTA member orientation, there is a difference between what a VISTA member leader does and what a VISTA member does. So if you could kind of quickly highlight that, and I'll add in a few comments afterward.
Yeah, sure, Eric. Yeah, I can give just kind of a brief overview. So first off, a VISTA leader, in order to be a leader or apply to be a leader, they need national service experience. Typically, that's 1 full year of VISTA service, or the equivalent of 1 full year from AmeriCorps State and National, for example, or in CCC. Whereas those are based on hours, not necessarily days, but the equivalent of a full year, or Peace Corps. And as Eric mentioned, kind of a follow-up to Beth, what Beth was mentioning about the recently returned Peace Corps volunteers, where many of them, if they served a year but had to exit due to COVID, that year would make them eligible to apply to be a leader. That's not necessarily always the case, but for those who were evacuated due to COVID, that is the case right now. So we definitely make sure, you know, that that's something to attract leaders, and we're always looking for leaders. And then in terms of, so yeah, leaders receive a higher stipend. They also, at the end of their service, if they get the cash stipend, they also receive a higher living allowance. And leaders' badges are significantly different, and their training is different, whereas, you know, they're usually working to coordinate amongst other VISTA members within their organization typically. And so we're looking at 6 or 7 VISTA members are looking to their VISTA leader for guidance on certain topics and issues. And then the VISTA members work directly with the organization to fulfill their bad duties. Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
I did, but you actually did a really, really good job covering it, so I don't have anything else to add. Well, the final thing I'll say is, in most cases, a VISTA project does have to have usually a minimum of 8 members in order to qualify to have a leader, so just keep that in mind. But more information about that, if you're interested in having a leader, you'd have to talk directly to your CNCS program officer or portfolio manager. So before we move to the next section, if there's any other information that you need on the topic specifically of service opportunity listings, please be specific. Yeah, it would be nice if I could say that word. Please be specific and type that in the chat so we can later try to follow up and add additional resources to what we have. But we're going to now go ahead and move on to the next section. And this section is on marketing and outreach, something Beth and Crystal do a lot of and a great job doing it. So I'll turn it back over to Chris to give a quick highlight of some of the marketing and outreach information.
Yeah, so for marketing and outreach, again, similar to the first section, if you have questions already set to go, please feel free to go ahead and type those into the chat. And while doing that, we'll just, you know, give a quick overview of marketing and outreach. So we suggest to make use of many methods of marketing. You know, that could be print materials, digital imagery, in-person conversations when that's possible, live and recorded storytelling, etc. And understand that not everyone gets excited about the same marketing avenues. Some might just be attracted to the living allowance. Some are attracted to the professional development. There are several different aspects there. Also, don't do this alone. Use your volunteers, your board members, stakeholders, and community members to assist you when possible in recruiting. They can help spread the word, review your materials to make sure they are attractive, grammatically correct, and as we mentioned before, you know, fix any acronyms so that's not confusing to potential applicants. Also consider if your outreach is focused on one or more specific target audiences. If it is, brainstorm ways you can tailor and customize your print and digital outreach and marketing to really connect with those audiences. Applicants must apply through My AmeriCorps, but don't necessarily solely rely on that for recruitment. So advertise on your website, on social media, on flyers, and anywhere you can. Also, let your professional networks know about VISTA and ask them to help you recruit. And of course, given the current status of things and the at least immediate future, many things will need to shift to a virtual recruitment, of course. So definitely explore ways to do virtual marketing and outreach. This may include, but certainly not limited to, attending virtual career fairs, customizing digital marketing on social media and websites, and creating recorded videos, especially with VISTA members and alumni telling their story, which is great. That could be a way to electronically get your VISTA project story out there. Okay, great. So we'll stop there on just the kind of the quick overview and turn to see any questions that came in.
Thank you, Chris, for that important overview. I see a few people are typing now. Looks like there's probably going to be a couple of questions on marketing and outreach. And while we wait another minute, I'll see if Beth or Crystal has any other quick comments they want to add. I know we're going to talk about some resources towards the end of the presentation about marketing and outreach, but I'll quickly turn it over to Beth or Crystal, and as we get a couple of questions queued up.
Yes, this is Crystal, and as Chris mentioned, that we strongly encourage you to use those virtual opportunities. I have seen several sponsors that use Facebook Live to go online to talk about their project and what they have going on, and get people excited about their opportunity and coming to work and matching their opportunities, specifically mentioning what their opportunities or what their service opportunities, the impact that it's going to have. There are students out there that are looking at bridge year opportunities. This is fresh after graduation, and matter of fact, I believe it's a couple of graduations or graduation coming up this weekend. But these students, their fall plans have possibly changed, and for those sponsors that are going to be looking to launch in the fall, we encourage you to get busy, ramping up promotions for your opportunities and such.
Thank you, Crystalline.
Yes.
So a couple of questions have come in, and I'll see if we can answer at least 3 of them, hopefully, in the time we have. So one question that came in earlier that is very much related to marketing and outreach is, what are some examples of ways to make the recruitment process more fun, specifically in relation to marketing and outreach? They know some people want to customize and tailor it to their program, but do we have ways of how to make the marketing and outreach process more fun? So I'll turn it over to Beth first, and then to Crystal, and to think. I know both of them are very fun people and enjoy finding creative ways to think of what can you do to make the recruitment process more fun.
Hey, thank you, Eric. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I saw that pop up earlier as well, and started thinking about some different ideas of what you could do to make recruitment fun. You know, in this time of COVID, it's a little bit more difficult because everything has to be virtual or over the phone. But, you know, outside of COVID, I think that even just hosting a drop-in for potential applicants and giving them an opportunity to learn more about your organization and what the program is about. You could also do that virtually over a Zoom, have like a Zoom coffee chat, and have a webinar or a short presentation about your organization and about the program itself. And I think, you know, as you move through the recruitment process, and when you have determined your candidate and how to keep them engaged, that's where you can think of a lot of fun ways to keep them engaged until it's time for them to start their service, whether it's again, doing something virtually with your entire staff, or sending them fun information about where they're going to be serving in the community. And I know we'll get more into that in a little bit, but I think those are some fun ways that you can think about making it fun, and even just making your ads fun, your social media postings fun and exciting, whether you're using a photo of the impact that members are going to be making, or sharing the statistics of the impact that your organization has on the specific project. I think those are all some ways to consider making them a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, and I'll throw this in real quick. Eric, do I have a second?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll throw this in real quick. We encourage you to be accessible and engaging when these applicants are reaching out to you to ask questions, be it on your social media page, making a phone call, or shooting an email to you. Answer. I monitor our VISTA outreach box at headquarters, and I can't tell you how many AmeriCorps VISTA applicants they haven't signed on yet. They're letting me know that they're really excited about the opportunity. They submitted their application several weeks ago, and they have yet to hear something from that sponsor, you could be risking losing your potential VISTA member when you're not responding to those messages, because as I said, those people are reaching out to us to say, hey, I applied, but I haven't heard back. Well, during that downtime that they're not hearing back from you, they could possibly be losing their excitement about coming to serve your organization. And also, I mentioned be engaging. And when I say engaging, be excited when you're talking to them. Be excited to hear from them. Be excited about getting their application. These applicants are picking up on that, and that also gives them a feel of what the atmosphere is when in serving for your project. So yes, be accessible when they're asking you questions, social media page, or contacting you any other kind of way, and be engaging when you're speaking with them, when you're communicating with them, and answer those questions.
Great. Thank you very much, both of you. I'm going to try to squeeze in two more really quick questions. One of them I will answer very quickly. It's probably not going to show up on the screen very well, but I'll post it really quickly because it's a quick answer. Some sponsors we know use other websites such as Indeed and Facebook to promote opportunities. A lot of people apply through there, and they ask people to apply then on the AmeriCorps website, but they haven't. So the question is it mandatory for them to use the AmeriCorps portal? And the answer is yes. Obviously, you should not 100% rely on the My AmeriCorps portal for advertising your positions, but in order for someone to be an AmeriCorps VISTA member, they do ultimately have to apply through the AmeriCorps website. So you would still have to create an opportunity listing for them to apply, but as you mentioned, you can still advertise your positions elsewhere on Indeed, Facebook, your organization's website, as long as you remind people that their final step to officially apply, they do have to go to the My AmeriCorps portal to actually submit their application. And then the last question I will get to is, so the question basically centers around some projects obviously have vistas for 1 year, some are in the middle of recruiting for their second or third year. And in 2010, they had a Category 5 hurricane that, of course, was very devastating and destroyed a lot of the housing that was available, which makes bringing people from outside our area difficult because housing costs in many areas are very expensive. So I'll just ask any of the three staff really quickly if they have any ideas on ways to encourage locals who want to be a VISTA member who already live in the area and maybe don't have to look for housing options. Any quick ideas on how to encourage locals to serve as a VISTA?
Yes, this is a great question. I'm glad. Thank you for asking it, because that is one of our arguments, if you will, for finding VISTA members in your areas that are possibly hard to recruit. Places like churches or houses of worship. These people being committed to their house of worship, they are committed to service. So that is a key factor that we're looking for. And they are residents of this area, of this city. And so looking at avenues like local centers, such as houses of worship, we strongly encourage you to go there, as well as when we're in a more normal world again, possibly setting up at local events, such as your local farmers market. People are coming out. These people at these local farmers market, they live in these areas, and so they could be more inclined to want to hear about your opportunity, and if not apply for themselves, they'll possibly spread the word, or I'm sure they'll spread the word. And local public media, those are places that could help you in promoting your opportunities. So they're all around us. I encourage you to do some online research. Do a search for whatever city you live in, the name of your city, town, and the words public service, volunteers, and see what organizations pop up. And we encourage you to reach out to those organizations and let them know about your opportunity. And career development organizations as well. Thank you. I'm sorry, Eric.
Oh, no, you're good. I was about to say, before we move on, I'll just add one other quick thing, and going back to what Crystal and I mentioned earlier is, don't forget about non-traditional. So you probably have people in your area who are retirees, recent college grads, people who know the community, love the community, want to stay there, want to give back. Definitely tap into those areas. And if you do have additional information or resources that you need specifically on marketing and outreach, I know there's some questions we didn't have time to answer. Go ahead and type what information you're looking for in the chat, and we'll capture the chat later and see what we can do to provide additional resources for you.
Yes, please. And local
So
job corps organizations are everywhere as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Crystal and Chris and Beth. With that, we'll go ahead and move to our third section of questions. We know a lot of people have questions on interviewing and selecting, so I'll turn it back over to Chris Hawks to give a very brief overview of some interviewing and selecting tips.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So yeah, if anyone has questions on this topic on interviewing and selecting applicants, please feel free to enter those in the chat. Meanwhile, as Eric mentioned, I'll give a quick overview, which some points that many of you likely already know, but maybe they can help to spark an idea for a question or bring up a question. So a few notes. So be intentional about your interview questions. You can certainly ask some fun questions to gauge how they respond and how creative they are, and also ask questions that have meaning and importance to your positions. So there's the fun aspect that Eric was talking about previously, and Crystal Lynn just now. Also sound enthusiastic. You may be tired from having, for example, just had 4 other interviews that you just conducted. But remember that an interview is two-way. If you happen to be boring, they're not going to want to continue throughout that application process. So be engaging, especially because your energy may be contagious. I know for me, when someone is engaging, it's often contagious for me to really spark up, and it really enhances the interview. Also, take a little time to further explain the organization, the VISTA project, and the VISTA position. So don't just assume that the applicant knows all they need to know from the service opportunity listing and your website. It's almost a given, or it's almost certain that they're going to have questions, and certainly take notes on the questions they ask and what they say, because that can be just as valuable as their answers to the interview questions. Especially if you anticipate some applicants dropping out before they start service, consider having a wait list. If you do, you want to be very clear to let those people on the wait list know that they have not yet been selected, but are on the wait list, and that you will keep them informed. This way, more quickly and easily, you could select a new person if someone happens to drop out during that recruitment process. Also, keep your candidates engaged. Communicate with them at least on a weekly basis. I think that's a great recommendation. So this could include sharing maybe a staff directory with photos so they could see the staff and team that they're going to join, a list of local fun places to visit if they don't happen to be from the area, or even if they are. Also information about poverty in the area, a short video helping to explain the organization maybe. And so don't ghost them, and that's because they want more information and truly want to know that you are preparing them, that you're setting them up for success, and that you are excited for them to start. Also practice remote interviews by video and phone. Some people think that there's really nothing to it, but remember that there are a lot of factors that can turn someone away, like lack of eye contact, poor audio quality, awkward facial expressions, or maybe a lack of understanding of how to use technology, or other things in that nature. So make the video or phone interview as physical and verbally engaging as it would be if it was in person. You must remember that just as you are interviewing the applicant is interviewing you and your VISTA project. Okay, so overview done. Let's see what questions may have come in the chat.
Thank you, Chris. And as a reminder, you can post your questions in the chat or use the raise hand feature in Zoom if you have a verbal question. We have about 4.5 minutes. If there's any questions on interviewing and selecting, we want to definitely leave time because I know a lot of projects are in the middle of interviewing or trying to select candidates virtually, as Chris was mentioning, and just trying to navigate the process. I know earlier I saw a question, and I'll see if I can find it and type it in, around, and Chris, this might be for you in relation to your VISTA member orientation work, is after the project interviews and selects a candidate, what's next in the process? Do you want to start answering that, and then we can chime in?
Yeah, I can try to fill that in, although I probably don't know 100% of the details, just because that's a lot of that process is, as many of you know, is handled with the CNCS regional office, the state or regional office. But yeah, if someone is interviewed and selected, then that person will need to go into My AmeriCorps and also accept the position if they're selected. So it's kind of a back and forth at that point, where the candidate or applicant accepts the position in My AmeriCorps, and then it goes to the CNCS regional office, where it's pending regional office review. And if there's any sort of criminal history justification, it has to go through that process. If there's any sort of that's kind of when the citizenship and social security number is reviewed in My AmeriCorps. It goes through the Social Security Administration. So sometimes that could take a few days just to be reviewed by the Social Security Administration, make sure everything's good, that they didn't, fat finger a number on the Social Security number, and that would require it to be re-entered. And then at that point, yeah, it's through the regional office to go through that process, and then work with you as well to determine a correct start date and a VISTA member orientation to place that candidate in to see when they'll start. I'm sure I'm missing something, Eric. Feel free to add.
Well, that was a very good summary, and I didn't want to go into too much more detail than what you added, just because I know we have a couple of other quick questions coming in, but that was a great summary, Chris, so thank you for that. The next question, I think I'll turn over to Crystalline and a lot of the work that she's done around marketing and outreach. And this question is, this happens quite a bit in different instances. We keep getting ghosted when we invite candidates for interviews, and sometimes people get ghosted even before that process. Crystalline, do you have any recommendations on how to avoid projects getting ghosted when they try to request an interview?
Yes, from reading this question, it looks like they talked with the candidate or communicated with the candidate and have scheduled the interview, but they never show up for the interview. I want to ask what's happening, or encourage you to think about what's happening in between that schedule the interview and the actual interview itself. Again, if it's a lot of time that's in between those two areas and you're not communicating with them, or they just aren't engaged anymore, that could possibly be the reason why they're falling off. I also want you to think about, are these people that will have to move into the city, or do they already live in the city? If they are people who will actually have to relocate to come to the opportunity, think about that. Think about what we just discussed earlier about finding people that are already in the city. In reading the comments over here, I saw that one sponsor is keeping their applicants engaged to their interview time by sending them to the organization's newsletter so they can learn more about what's going on. So it really just depends, but there are all sorts of avenues just to keep them engaged. One sponsor that I previously talked with, they actually sent a team selfie to the applicant who was scheduled for an interview to say, hey, this is who you're going to be serving with once we make our decision and you decide to come aboard, this is the possible team that you could be serving with. One team, we're really big on pets around our office. We don't actually have the live pet in the office, but we're often sharing pictures of our pets. And so people get excited about those kind of things. So keeping that energy up is a key point to keeping that energy so you can get them to that interview and get them to commit.
Thank you very much. One final quick question I'll answer before we go to the last section in the last couple of minutes is, should the interviewing process be done by an active VISTA or should it be done by their manager? I will quickly say, kind of on behalf of our team, current VISTA members are able to be involved in the interview process, but it really is useful and important if the future supervisor or someone at the project site is also involved in the interview, because remember the VISTA is only there temporarily for 1 year, and it's really good to have someone with working knowledge of the organization and part of the process to be involved hosting and managing the interview, because it allows for sustainability and there might be additional questions about the VISTA project that the supervisor needs to answer. Any quick follow-up comments to that before we move on?
Yeah, it could also be helpful if that VISTA member is involved to allow them to share their story, not just specifically being there to ask questions, but allow them to share their story about how service has made a big difference to them personally as well as to the community.
Thank you, Crystalline. So let's go ahead and move on to the fourth section. And remember, if you have other questions or comments about interviews and selecting applicants, please be sure to post those in the chat panel. So this is our last section, which we'll only have a couple of minutes for in terms of other remaining questions. And again, as we move to the next slide, I just want to remind you that we will be following up with a lot of these questions, and I'll be working with our marketing and outreach team to see if there's any other resources that we can add based on this webinar, or a way to follow up to some of the questions that haven't been answered. So really quickly, I'll just say, obviously there's been a lot of questions we answered. We answered quite a few, but if there's any other questions that you have, go ahead and type them in the chat, and we'll probably have time for 2 questions, and then we'll finish out with some resources. So I see one question coming in, and I'm going to ask if we can move to the next slide. Sorry about that. So let me type this question in. I think it's a useful one. It's a long question, but the question is, do you have any, oh, no, that's not the question. Never mind. So we'll wait a minute to see if there are any specific questions, other questions that have not been answered from individuals on the call. I'm scrolling back through to look. We answered some questions about how do you engage people, how do you keep people involved. We answered interview and marketing questions. So why don't we now, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And if there are other recruitment questions that come in, and if we have a minute or 2 at the end, we can go ahead and answer them. But quickly for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Beth Binkley, who's going to highlight some very, very meaningful and useful recruitment resources that our marketing, outreach, and recruitment unit has developed. Beth?
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm super excited to share the number of resources we have related to recruitment. And again, as we mentioned earlier, one thing to consider is recruiting a returned Peace Corps volunteer. And as I mentioned, especially now during COVID, since the Peace Corps volunteers were evacuated from their service sites because of the pandemic, and they are looking to serve here stateside to continue making a difference. And just a reminder that we did hold a webinar for them back in April. We let them know about all AmeriCorps opportunities, but specifically to VISTA, we focused on the VISTA leader positions. And we do know that there have some sponsors have already placed some returned Peace Corps volunteers in VISTA leader positions. And as you know, many VISTA members talk about wanting to do Peace Corps, and we also hear Peace Corps members always interested in participating as a VISTA member. This slide is we're super excited about this because we worked on creating this new Recruitment Resource Hub, which was also listed in the Gov delivery that we sent back in May. That is on our nationalservice.gov site. It has links to digital and print materials, social media graphics. You can order gear from this hub, and we also include templates for PowerPoints on talking about AmeriCorps service, and links to videos and photos. And we also have helpful handouts, and just super excited that we're able to share this. This was a year in the making, and so glad that we have it here in this slide. Also on nationalservice.gov, if you go to the VISTA program page, you will find resources to support the marketing of your project. You can find brochures, fact sheets, customizable flyers. You can also download photos and videos that you can use in your own recruitment ads, and so much more. And we also, on the VISTA campus, the marketing, outreach, and recruitment team recently updated our recruitment pages with resources to help you recognize and plan for recruitment. And as you can see, we have all the steps included, from planning to final engagement once you've selected your members, and hopefully you will find a lot of good resources and tools to support your efforts. And lastly, of course, you can also find VISTA-specific recruitment and materials on vistacampus.gov. You can use the search box to search for recruitment information, recorded on-demand webinars, recommendations and tips, and much more. And also, don't forget to create a free VISTA Campus Supervisor account, and there you can post your questions, ideas, and resources on the Supervisor Cafe discussion forums. The specific alumni stories page on the VISTA campus is highlighted here to remind you that this is one of the best ways to recruit, is by having your current members or some of your alumni share their story in writing, in images, on video. Definitely you should be sharing these on all your social media platforms, and whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, to engage your followers so that they can learn more about your service opportunities. You can ask them to share those opportunities with their own followers, and it just allows folks to get a better idea of what they will do as a VISTA member at your project.
Thank you very much, Beth. Really quickly, we'll move to the next steps. So as you can see on the screen, and we'll just highlight all four of them, one next step is to continuously evaluate your recruitment plan, as we talked about. Make sure it's accurate, up-to-date, useful, and engaging. Another one is consult your VISTA project sponsor staff, board members, volunteers, all the stakeholders that you have. Let them know what you're doing. Help them, get them to help you promote the program. As Beth just mentioned, visit the VISTA campus, because there's a lot of resources that have been developed there. And then if you have specific project-specific questions for your VISTA project, then you can send them to your CNCS portfolio manager or program officer. Finally, we would love for you to complete the evaluation. It's a very brief form to not only talk about how this presentation was, but if you have suggestions for future monthly VISTA Supervisor webinars, we greatly appreciate your feedback. The link is in the chat and will also be automatically in the web browser where you open this Zoom session. And then, as you've probably seen, the next webinar that we're doing for VISTA Supervisors is 2 weeks, Tuesday, July 21st, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, talking about turning your attention to VISTA member retention. A lot of sponsors want to know, how do they retain their VISTA members? It's not enough just to recruit, but how do you keep them engaged? How do you motivate them? How do you inspire them? And how do you really show them what it means to be a VISTA and want to stay for the entire year? So the registration link is in the chat. We encourage you to attend. And then finally, I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped out with this webinar, especially my coworkers, Chris Hawks, Beth Binkley, Crystal and Dupree. Amazing work today. Couldn't have done it without you. I greatly appreciate it. I also want to thank our partners, Mike and Steve at LSI, for managing Zoom. And we really want to thank you for the difficult but fun and amazing task of recruitment and filling your VISTA positions. You do amazing work. Probably don't get enough credit, but just know on behalf of myself, my entire team, and the AmeriCorps VISTA program, thank you for everything you do. Have a great day. This concludes today's session.